Let's move on. We got a little bit of time to discuss some NBA, and I want to discuss this with you when it comes to the NBA. I think the NBA has a massive problem, and it's not load management, but it is twofold. It is what I watched over NBA All-Star Weekend. For the first time in my life, I turned off the game completely. I thought it was a disgrace to the sport. I thought it was one of the worst things I ever I mean, you could clearly tell the guys were not caring at all about the game. And I think that it hurts popularity. It hurts fans' value in that way. The players don't clearly care about the weekend at all. So the NBA isn't going to do away with it because it makes so much money, even though I could make the argument they really should. But outside of the 3-point contest and Steph versus Sabrina, which I thought was awesome. The dunk contest, I'm just gonna be honest. I don't care about Max McClung. I don't care that he can dunk over Shaq bending down. He's a G League player. Why should I care about a guy who can't even make an NBA roster? He's a great dunker. Whoop-de-doo. Um, in my opinion, I think that the event has become so much more fan focused. I don't think fans should vote on players at all. I think it should be media members. I think it should be players, and I think it should be coaches because I think that fans have a personal bias towards everything. You like a player more than I do. I like this player more than you do. Um, and I think that the only solution to fix it would be you literally putting money bags on the table, and each player gets, a couple $1 million, and the losers have to give the money back to the winners. Just some incentivize. I don't know. What's your whole thoughts on the whole situation?
I mean, I agree with most of what you said, and I didn't even turn on the All-Star game or any of the I don't think I even turned on any of the All-Star festivities period this year. I was just like wasn't too interested this year, honestly. But here's the thing I also would say. I don't think the media should have as big of a sway in this whole process because there are some guys out there, and I'm not going to drop any names. There are people out there who definitely have a very personal bias towards some players and who just for one reason, silly or not or another, will not vote for certain guys. I would say that, and I know I'm making a little bit of a little surprise here by saying that. I would admit if the media's role is in that process, you have to make it a very small percentage of that because there are going to be guys who will use their positions to wield their cudgel and be able to potentially exclude guys from the game because there's a personal bias or there was something about an interview or this or that they didn't like. So there's got to be a little bit of a safeguard there if you're going to include the media because I'm not going to drop any names. It's going to be that, but it needs to be fixed. Like especially like the 3-point contest, I think is now the more exciting event
Yeah.
of that whole weekend, which is hard to believe because you still remember like Dwight Howard when we were younger as kids, like
The
doing
last
that
great
stuff.
dunk contest I remember, there was all that Aaron Gordon 2016. I thought for the times it was okay, but nobody remembers Blake Griffin jumping off a car. That was
Oh, that was that. Oh, jumping over the car. That is the best dunk moment that I can remember in my lifetime. Just
exactly.
like
Um,
that was the pinnacle, and then it went all downhill from there.
so I do think though this is twofold, and this is my real question is, we've seen the NBA, there's guys scoring 50, 60, 70 points a night, and I don't really care anymore because I don't think teams play that much defense in the regular season. And yes, the NBA does have more offensive talent than ever, but scoring does go down in the postseason because there is better defense, there's less foul calls, teams are playing more physical. It's a series, not one game, et cetera, et cetera. The NBA, again, they'll never do it because it's a money situation. But I loved what the NBA did. It was the year after COVID when they had the 72 game season, and it started in December and it went into July, and the playoffs started in May, right after the NFL schedule release. And the NBA, even more than baseball, dominated the summer. I think that that's what the NBA needs to do. I would move the season. I'd get rid of a lot of games. I think a 66 game regular season would do. I think you would create less back to backs, even though you would lose money, obviously, from the West home games and the West games in itself. But I think it would just create so much more urgency and so much betterness in the product that you're not having these guys randomly sit out a back to backs. That's what I would do at least. But do you agree that The NBA regular season and some of the postseason needs to be restructured.
I don't think you need to restructure the postseason per se. Maybe I can get on board with the regular season. I think you could drop a few games. The problem is TV contracts, money, etc. Like in the theoretical world that we could do it, that'd be awesome. But if you reduce the games, that's less games that television ads, all that, etc. And that's what's the problem. And then you've also got the situation with Bally still going on with the NBA and them. So like there's that whole thing that you have to worry about, and the other RSNs for the local broadcast rights beyond the national. So you got to solve that first. But I think, I wouldn't say 66, but definitely dropping maybe at least 6 to 10 games. That could be, where things are better. I want to call this out, though, that 65 game rule is trying to incentivize players to play. If a player is actually hurt, like Donovan Mitchell has been hurt, and if he gets back on time, I don't know if he did or not, if he's impacted now and he can no longer win MVP.
Mitchell's max is 64 games now. So yeah, he's been disqualified from MVP
Like
running.
that is absolute effing bull crap.
Well,
Absolutely.
if you're not available, I mean,
But the problem is that he wasn't sitting out to rest. Legitimate injury.
I
Legitimate
understand that,
injury
but
that required an
also
ejection. Like if you're like, I don't I there needs to be a restructure to that rule going into next year. If you're going to keep it around, if it's guys who are healthy and getting scratched, and I mean like healthy as in, yeah, they're not having surgery, yeah, they're not having PRP injections, they're just resting. Okay, make those games count. But if you're going to have guys who are injured and who are then still trying to go out on the ball, but you cannot physically go out and get there, but you're trying your best to do so, and you're trying to get healthy quick enough to get back on the court, you either have to eliminate that, like have a very strict criteria for that to be able to allow that player to still remain eligible for MVP, or you have to half that value somehow. You have to make it weighted less so that way, technically, a player wouldn't have missed as many games in the criteria if it is a legitimate injury, and they're still, making at least more than half the games. Obviously, more than half, probably 50 or something games. But it's like you can't, like Donovan Mitchell, if he still plays 55 games this year, and he has been the driver for the Cavaliers. And I'm not saying that just as hometown bias, but even like a guy like Joel Embiid, like he's been a guy who over the years has
oh,
had injury
Joel Embiid
problems.
would be the MVP 100% this
Yeah,
year.
but I'm saying like, if that happened with Joel Embiid, there'd be an even more of an uproar right now. Like that rule needs tweaked. I think it's a good idea, but you need to tweak it, especially for guys who are not just resting, who are not just veterans who are resting. You need to tweak it to wait guys who are actually injured, who are trying to get on the court, who are actually trying to perform. If they're actually injured and like, that PRP injection, you need to make that less towards that
I
game
agree
counter.
with you
You
in
need to
theory,
tweak
but
that rule.
I agree with you in theory, but I also think no matter what, if a guy misses 20 games, which is basically a quarter of the season, they can't win MVP.
Yeah, but that mean you'd have to miss what 20 games. You'd still have to play in 62. I think if you play in just 60 or 58 or 60 games, you're still an MVP. I think anything lower than that, that's where it's. I can agree, but I think you have to at least. I think just the what was it 65 game threshold, like that's just hard in today's modern NBA, especially as sports science has evolved. I mean, there's going to be, every now and then you'll rest, sure, but I mean, gosh darn, like guys who are legitimately injured and who are trying to work their way back, I mean, you shouldn't be disqualified. Like that's something that just needs to be tweaked.
Okay, so Sean, we know the NBA is the easiest sport to win a championship. And we know in the NBA we've had dynasties. And we know in sports, generally when we have one dynasty, we go from one dynasty to the next. We're seeing in the NFL right now, we had New England, we pretty much transitioned right into the Kansas City dynasty. You could make the argument, San Antonio dynasty in the NBA transitioned right into the Golden State dynasty. Now we are exiting the Golden State dynasty, and I think we have our next dynasty. I think the
Who it?
Denver Nuggets are a dynasty. And I don't think no one's stopping them. And I think that barring an injury to Nikola Jokic or Jamal Murray for that matter, they're going to win the championship again this year. Nobody can change my mind on that. I don't think you can stop Jokic in a 7-game series. And I think until Victor Wembanyama becomes of age in the next 2-3 years, I don't see anything besides health and maybe greed that stops this Denver team. I just think they play so good offensively. They're so good defensively in the last 5 minutes. Nikola Jokic takes over games at will, and it just feels like they're the best overall team. They have the best overall player, and I think that they are the next dynasty.
I don't think they are yet. I think there's a chance they can get there. I just don't. I need to see it. I need to see it back to back, or I need to see 2 out of 3 years them winning a title. I think that's the part where it's like until it happens, until we see it happen, I don't think there's going to be a dynasty quite yet. I think the Celtics are still in contention. I think Minnesota could definitely do something. LA has got the pieces. Cleveland's going to have something to say. Milwaukee. This is probably the most open that it's been in a while. And I still feel like, right now, Denver is a potential favorite to repeat. But I don't know if I would necessarily go that far yet. I think they have the path, they have the players, they have the potential to do it. But I would say wait until after this year and after next year. If they win a title this year, then I would say, yeah, we got a dynasty on our hands. If they win next year, Denver, hey, we have a dynasty on our hands. If they don't win either the next 2 years, yeah, no, I don't know yet. I think it's a little premature, but I think there is potential there to have them potentially be a dynasty. We'll see.
I don't trust Boston. I know they won
Boston,
58.
yeah, they're the one team that's hard to trust, but it's like I don't know, man. Like
They
I don't.
this has to be the year. Giannis and Damian Lillard have not been as good. I suggest they'll be better next year when they get a full year in with
It's
Doc Rivers.
it sounds like the other thing that it was a quote from Dame recently about not being able to go out and do anything. I'm wondering if he's a guy who just apparently I think his family's was in like South Beach around the Florida Miami area or something. Correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe just being away from family, like that, having that tax on you. Like
Well,
I
I
know,
think
like
it's just there's nothing to do in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
I think there's certainly got to be things to do. Maybe it's not
I
the
mean, Aaron
nightlife.
Rodgers said the same thing about Green Bay for 20 years. He was like, "What's there nothing to do in the state of Wisconsin?" Was his exact quote.
Yeah. But I mean, overall, though, I mean, like, if you're a competitor, you go out and ball wherever you're at. Like, but like, I think there's also just some stuff going on with Dame. Maybe it's just, maybe the warmer weather would have helped, but I don't know. I
All
mean,
right.
he still could be all-star. He's still an all-star in my mind.
So, last question, and I know you're going to disagree with me on it, and I'm
Oh
going to sound
boy.
like a hater. I don't like our Cavs. I don't. I don't think we're physically tough. I don't think we're mentally tough. I think we're getting ready for another first round exit. I think JB should have been fired last year. I think we're not going to fire him, but I would probably fire him at the end of this year. I think I think the only two teams we could beat in a first round matchup would be Orlando or Indiana. I think we matched up with Philly. If Embiid came back, I think we'd lose. I think if we'd match up against Miami, I think they'd kill us. I think Jimmy Butler would wear us out mentally. I don't think our guys are physically tough. I don't think we're ready. I don't think JB Bickerstaff is an X's and O's type of coach. And quite frankly, I don't think this team is consistent enough to win more than a first round series.
I would agree on the first round series. I'd say even no matter what the result is this postseason, unless it's a title, and I'm putting an asterisk on that. Like I'm not expecting a title necessarily, but even if you lose in the first round or if you get to the second round, you got to fire JB Bickerstaff. I love the guy personally, just more so that what he's done with his core. But look at Golden State, Mark Jackson, who they bring in, Steve Kerr, who is one of the best coaches in the entire National Basketball Association. That is the next step. Unless Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland, and the other two stars, Allen and Mobley, and I know you may not necessarily agree with the star label, unless they say keep JB here, I would get rid of JB and nothing against the guy. But he's done a good job of this roster, but I think you have to go for the big home run hire, because if you get someone else, and if that's what also clinches Donovan Mitchell signing a max contract this summer, you win. You win. You're going to next year, if that happens, you get rid of JB, you go for the home run hire, you lock in Mitchell long term. and he's, not wanting to go anywhere else, you are going to win the 2025 NBA title. Period.
This is my other take, and I know you're not going to agree with me on this either. I think along with firing JB, if you have an early first round exit, I think you have to explore trading Darius Garland. Because I don't know. It depends on how the playoffs go, but I just have this feeling. I don't think you can have 2 6-1 guards play together and win. I think you would need a bigger. You can move Mitchell to point, and I said this last year. I would have explored trading away DG because I still think the Cavs need a legit three. As much as I like Struz and some of the other guys, I think you don't have that legit wing guy yet. And I think in order to get it, you have to be willing to give up a Garland or an
You
Allen,
have to give up
or
Garland for
not give
somebody,
up.
but you can only give up Garland for a star, nothing else. Unless you're
Well,
willing
yeah,
to let Sam Merrill actually develop and
well,
play and
yeah,
maybe he
that's what
does
I'm
something.
saying. I don't know if you remember, I posed this to you last year. It was Darius Garland for Paul George straight up.
Well, now that George has been healthy, it's a lot easier to say, yeah, it's a lot easier to say I'd be willing to make that trade right now.
I mean,
But
I would have done it last year.
the problem is that George was coming off a lot of injuries, and so was Kawhi Leonard. Like I didn't know what to
Was, but
think.
you needed that bigger guy because the Cavs, Allen and Mobley are great, but they don't have that great wing defender. I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
we came back against Boston. Here's the other thing. The Cavs are celebrating, and I get it, they should, but they have been very lucky over the past couple weeks. Obviously, against Boston, the comeback, the
The
streak.
question is that where's the wing going to come from? Who do you get? Because you need to absolutely get a superstar player, and they need to have a point guard need. Because if you're not going to get that, then you can't trade Garland. As much as I agree with you on that, you have to get an absolute superstar for Garland. And Garland is an all-star at the bare minimum. So you
That's what I'm
have to.
saying. You would
That's
do
the
it to a
problem. Is
team
that
that has
who
a
who?
wing that doesn't have a
So
point.
I actually want to hear from you. Who do you think? Let's take Paul George out of this because I don't think he's coming here. Who do you get? Who is that superstar that team has a need for a point guard and that you could get them to Cleveland?
Okay, so give me a second because I have to run through it. You know what? Weirdly enough, off the top of my head, Lakers. I don't think they do it, but LeBron could.
LeBron? You're saying LeBron? Really?
Yeah,
That would be, oh
think about
boy.
it. Lakers need a point guard. Anthony Davis, Darius Garland, you would still have
That
LeBron.
would be, oh my God. I never even thought about that because the reason I never think of LeBron usually in trades for the most part is because the name value, the guy still just, even though he's not at his peak necessarily anymore, he is still one of the most valuable players in the
That's off the
NBA.
top of my head of a team that has a wing that needs a guard. Off the top of my
Yeah.
head. Now, the other one, you know, I mean, I it's tough. I would have said Clippers last year, but they have Harden now as the point guard. So, maybe like Phoenix, but I don't think they'd be willing to give up Durant.
They wouldn't probably, and Durant, I mean, Durant wouldn't be maybe as much of a problem, but and
Is
unfortunately,
Brooklyn
Dallas,
willing to
I
give
don't
up
think has
like a
anybody.
Miles Bridges?
I don't know. I wouldn't put Miles Bridges as a superstar. I don't know.
I I wouldn't, yeah, but I'm saying that's like
That's
because
the problem is that you need a superstar. You
yeah.
can't settle just for all star. You need superstar for Garland.
Well,
That's what
I
you
don't
need
know
for
about
like
that because I think if you had Mitchell with that combo, if Mobley then grows into your second superstar,
all right, true. I'll give you that one.